Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Suit in the City, coming to you live from New York City. We're glad to have you all here. And I'm wondering if we're going to have a lower than average um, amount of people today. Stephen and I were joking about the sutta. There are times when Stephen picks this, particular suttas, and there's time when I pick them. And we were talking earlier today about this sutta, and I was just like befuddled. And Stephen's,
Your choice.
that's right. And Stephen said, "Is this one of the times when I get to say, why did you pick this sutta?"
It's so weird.
It's so weird. Yeah, okay, so maybe that's what I've said a time or two. Why? Why did you pick this sutta, Stephen? But I have to claim responsibility for many, many of the suttas in this packet, including this one.
Well, we
So,
like lions and roars.
yes, we do. But those are some of the things we love. Some of
Think
the
on the bright side. It's about
yes,
lions.
that's right. Some of the things we don't love are pus and feces and urine. But we're going to have a lot of that tonight, guys. So strap in and get ready because it's going to be a heck of a ride. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, this is a wow. And I'm going to tell you, I think this is one of those suttas too, that if you don't have the commentary, you may not know so much about what's happening or why. And it all seems very strange, but we're going to fix it all up for you. Let's not have any resentments. It's all going to be good. We're going to deal with it. And how about you start us off tonight, Stephen, with a nice, sweet poem from our dear friend in Canada?
All right. Well, let's see. Can you see my poem?
I can.
Jan's Wiki. This is a very short poem called Securing the House. Interesting poem. And it goes, what is it we are trying to achieve? That we will learn before we die to make our leaving orderly? Imagine turning down the heat and walking out, not even locking up. Imagine coming back weeks later. Ah, the list of failures, unpaid bills, the missing jewelry, plant leaves browning on the windowsills, and the dust. What of the dust?
It's what one of my favorite news commentators used to say way back when. It's always something.
Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting poem, and I think in large part it has to do with this idea of wanting to be in charge, wanting to be in control. But in fact, when we leave our house or we leave this earth, things just keep going. The dust piles up and things happen, and we're not always able to control everything that we might have hoped to. The
Yeah.
plant leaves browning on the windowsill. I love that one.
I find that wanting or buying into or having this background belief that I can control things often leads to much dukkha, especially in the form of anger. Things
Hmm.
aren't going the way we planned. How can this be? Why doesn't the world cooperate? Um,
I have a question for you about the idea of a lion's roar, because I think we all want to speak to each other in a nice, kindly way. But I mean, does a lion's roar sound like a friendly way to address another person? How do you take that?
is this a trick question, Stephen?
No, I mean, I'm not sure myself how to make it. I don't, I'm not fully decided on this subject.
Well, I thought that I heard one time Bante saying that the reference to the lion's roar was that the lion, he's on top of the food chain, right? and thereby invincible, king of the jungle. So the lion's roar means, you know, it's all good. However, if someone here has the answer to that, please raise your hand as to why the lion's roar is so supreme. Otherwise, all right, Catherine, I am so not surprised that you have the answer. Stephen, will you make sure? Okay, Catherine,
I
yeah.
think lion roars means when it roars, everyone will listen. Everyone will pay attention.
That's a good
That's
point.
what I think.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And it's true. Whenever the lion roars, the other animals in the jungle absolutely do take note. Thank you. I like that, Catherine. That makes perfect sense.
But it seems to me that it also might contain an aspect of sometimes a declaration of a powerful truth is not pleasant. That in some cases, perhaps people, it's somewhat saying that in some cases, perhaps it's not always the most polite way to make a statement, but perhaps the most effective. But that's, I think, a very dangerous and risky concept because it could lead us into thinking, well, I'm entitled to make this giant, powerful declaration, and I don't really care who gets burnt. But it seems like Venerable Sariputta is making this kind of momentous um, declaration that the Buddha is encouraging, but it doesn't come across immediately as super friendly or soothing. And so I think it's a complicated idea of somebody who's extremely knowledgeable declaring the truth in a way that's powerful but yet a little bit hard to take. And I think your and my reaction to the sutta as we were reading it kind of bears that out a bit, that there was a sense of recoil, of uncomfortableness.
Yeah, most definitely. But as Catherine said, we had to listen.
That is true. We couldn't look away.
Hmm. Hmm. So I think it's got those aspects. It's unpleasant, but we can't avoid hearing it. If you're anywhere in the jungle, you can't avoid hearing it. Catherine, you had your hand up?
Yes,
Yes.
I think Venerable Sariputta, he shows neither anger or hate towards the monk. In fact, towards the end, he asked for forgiveness as well.
That's an excellent point, and I definitely did not mean to imply that Venerable Sariputta in any way was being unkind or mean, but I just think that sometimes hearing the truth itself, no matter how it's offered, can be an uncomfortable experience. Yes, well, thank you for that.
Yes, thank you so much. Um, I think, should we start with the sutta then, Stephen?
Maybe we should start reading. It's kind of long because there are these 9 points.
Right. Um, well, I think it would be worth it to try and power through it, though.
Okay,
Well, we'll see.
so we need at least 9 readers, or maybe close to 9 people who would like to read, because it's fairly lengthy.
Well, you know, people can take certain paragraphs.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go in this order: Brahman, Gita, Suan, and then whoever would like to continue, Ayavimala. Excellent. So let's start with Brahman.
Thank you for the opportunity. Sariputta's Lion's Roar. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Sawati in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. Then Venerable Sariputta went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down one side and said to him, "Sir, I have completed the rainy season residence at Savatthi. I wish to depart to wander the countryside. Please, Sariputta, go at your convenience." Then Sariputta got up from his seat, bowed, and respectfully circled the Buddha, keeping him on his right before leaving. And then, not long after Sariputta had left, a certain monk said to the Buddha, "Sir, Venerable Sariputta attacked me and left without saying sorry." So the Buddha said to a certain monk, "Please, monk, in my name, tell Sariputta that the teacher summons him." "Yes, sir," that monk replied. He went to Sariputta and said to him, "Reverend Sariputta, the teacher summons you."
Thank you so much, Brahman.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then I believe next we had Gita.
Hello to everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. Now at that time, the venerables Mahamoggallana and Ananda took a key and went from dwelling to dwelling, saying, "Come forth, venerables, come forth, venerables. Now Venerable Sariputta will roar his lion's roar in the presence of the Buddha." Then Venerable Sariputta went up to the Buddha, bowed, and sat down to one side. The Buddha said to him, "Sariputta, one of your spiritual companions has made this complaint. Venerable Sariputta attacked me and left without saying sorry. Sir, someone who had not established mindfulness of the body might well attack one of the spiritual companions and leave without saying sorry. Suppose they were to toss both clean and unclean things on the earth, like feces, urine, spit, pus, and blood. The earth is horrified, repelled, and disgusted because of this. In the same way, I live with a heart like the earth, abundant, expansive, limitless, free from enmity and ill will. Someone who had not established mindfulness of the body might well attack one of their spiritual companions and leave without saying sorry."
Thank you so much, Gita. Thank you. Much
Thank-
appreciated.
Thank you.
And next we have on the roster, I believe it was Suan. Suan?
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Suppose they were to wash both clean and unclean things in water, like feces, urine, spit, pus, and blood. The water isn't horrified, repelled, and disgusted because of this. In the same way, I live with a heart like water, abundant, expansive, limitless, free of enmity and ill will. Someone who had not established mindfulness of the body might well attack one of their spiritual companions and leave without saying sorry. Suppose a fire was to burn both clean and unclean things like feces, urine, spit, pus, and blood. The fire isn't horrified, repelled, and disgusted because of this. In the same way, I live with a heart like fire, abundant, expansive, limitless, free of enmity and ill will. Someone who had not established mindfulness of the body might well attack one of their spiritual companions and leave without saying sorry.
Thank you so much, Suan. I believe next up we have Ayavimala.
Suppose the wind was to blow on both clean and unclean things like feces, urine, spit, pus, and blood. The wind isn't horrified, repelled, and disgusted because of this. In the same way, I live with a heart like the wind, abundant, expansive, limitless, free of enmity and ill will. Someone who had not established mindfulness of the body might well attack one of their spiritual companions and leave without saying sorry. Suppose a rag was to wipe up both clean and unclean things like feces, urine, spit, pus, and blood. The rag isn't horrified, repelled, and disgusted because of this. In the same way, I live with a heart like a rag, abundant, expansive, limitless, free of enmity and ill will. Someone who had not established mindfulness of the body might well attack one of their spiritual companions and leave without saying sorry.
Thank you so much. I believe Jane Marie had her hand up. Yes.
I did, thank you. Suppose an outcast boy or girl holding a pot and clad in rags were to enter a town or village. They'd enter with a humble mind. In the same way, I live with a heart like an outcast boy or girl, abundant, limitless, measureless, free of enmity and ill will. Someone who had not established mindfulness of the body might well attack one of their spiritual companions and leave without saying sorry. Suppose there was a bull with his horns cut, gentle, well tamed, and well trained. He'd wander from street to street and square to square without hurting anyone with his feet or horns. In the same way, I live with a heart like a bull with horns cut, abundant, expansive, limitless, free of enmity and ill will. Someone who had not established mindfulness of the body might well attack one of their spiritual companions and leave without saying sorry.
Thank you, Jane Marie. Next, we have Diane.
Suppose there was a woman or man who was young, youthful, and fond of adornments and had bathed their head. If the corpse of a snake or a dog or a human were hung around their neck, they'd be horrified, repelled, and disgusted. In the same way, I'm horrified, repelled, and disgusted by this rotten body. Someone who had not established mindfulness of the body might well attack one of their spiritual companions and leave without saying sorry. Suppose someone was to carry around a bowl of fat that was leaking and oozing from holes and cracks. In the same way, I carry around this body that's leaking and oozing from holes and cracks. Someone who had not established mindfulness of the body might well attack one of their spiritual companions and leave without saying sorry. Then that monk rose from his seat, placed his robe over one shoulder, bowed with his head at the Buddha's feet, and said, I have made a mistake, sir. It was foolish, stupid, and unskillful of me to speak ill of Venerable Sariputta with a false, hollow, lying, untruthful claim. Please, sir, accept my mistake for what it is, so I will restrain myself in future.
Might as well finish.
Indeed, monk, you made a mistake. It was foolish, stupid, and unskillful of you to act in that way. But since you have recognized your mistake for what it is and have dealt with it properly, I accept it, for it is growth in the training of the noble one to recognize a mistake for what it is, deal with it properly, and commit to restraint in the future. Then the Buddha said to Venerable Sariputta, Sariputta, forgive that silly man before his head explodes into 7 pieces right here. I will pardon that Venerable if he asks me. May the Venerable please pardon me too.
Thank you so much to Diane and to all of our readers. Wow, so that was quite a doozy.
There's a lot in there.
It is a lot in there. So I noticed that we have, we start off with the description of, well, we have the 4 elements, right? And then after that, we have the rag that is not grossed out. We have the outcast. We have the tamed bull. And this bull is so tamed. Well, he has his horns cut off. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I hope that doesn't hurt. But nonetheless, he has his horns, cut down, and he doesn't hurt anyone with his hooves or the horns. And then it was this bowl of fat with fat oozing out of all of these different places that really turned this monk. And I can't enough. I apologize. I lied about you, Sariputta. And he confesses. Why was it that like put him over the edge, Stephen?
Maybe you just couldn't take anymore. And you said, whatever it takes to make you stop, I'll just stop. I'll just confess. No, I don't think that's the reason. I mean, I think perhaps one way to summarize this whole sutta very, very quickly would be, don't take yourself so seriously, right? Or don't take yourself so personally.
Well, I agree. And I would like to share with those who are wondering. I'll stop the share for just a second so I can see you all. You know, the backstory, you know, probably some of you already know the backstory, but for those of you who don't, I will elucidate. As many of you know, Sariputta was one of the most preeminent of the Buddha's attendants, students, monk, followers. And you know, monastics are people too. I bet you Aya Vimala would agree with that. Monastics are people too. And this young monk, well, he was a little jealous of Sariputta. He really was. And before Sariputta left, he, as we saw in the beginning of this sutta, he bowed and gave reverence to the Buddha. And that young monk, you know, just a piece of Sariputta's robe touched that monk, just a piece. And because that little piece of robe brushed against that monk took great umbrage. How dare you let that piece of your robe go all upon me like that? And he got really angry. And because of his jealousy, because he wanted to be other than what he was, he made a big deal out of this. And it's probably embarrassing. It blew up in his face, and all of the other monks came to hear Sariputta apologize, which he had no need to apologize. And then it was this young monk. And it really does go to show you, doesn't it, that the smallest of things, and unless you think this is completely false, I'm going to give you an example, because some of you might be saying, come on, it was just a robe. One time, many years ago, and we always seem to bring up subways. We can't help it. We live on the train.
Place of misery.
It is a place of misery. It's one of those third hells. It's definitely a hell realm of some sorts. And I was standing because it was crowded. There were no seats. And I was wearing a skirt, a cute little skirt, above the knee, not too much above the knee. And there was someone sitting down, and she was making some type of motion. And I was like, what the heck? And I looked down, and she was extremely angry because the hem of my skirt was touching her knee. She took great umbrage. She probably felt that I, much like this young monk in the story, was being disrespectful to her. So it sort of goes along with what Stephen was saying, not taking ourselves too seriously, not taking situations seriously, not getting petty. Now, this is kind of funny, but at the same time, well, you know, here in New York City, if you take someone's parking spot, it could cost you your life. I mean, people get really upset about the silliest things. And so it really brings to mind the importance of letting stuff not affect us. But I want to just jump right up on that and also add, and Stephen had pulled up some suttas and we wanted to share them with you. I don't know if we have them now. If we not, next time. You know, one of the things that the Buddha enjoins us to avoid doing is comparison. It is this conceit. I am better than you. I am less than you. I am equal to you. Any type of comparison, we are really asked in our practice to avoid making. And I think this is a really good example of the perils of comparison. It sets up this dynamic of like wanting to knock someone off the top of the hill, right? This young monk saw how important Sariputta was to the Buddha nonetheless. Well, and he felt that he wanted to be like that and he wasn't. And I think there's a real lesson there. Stephen?
I agree. I mean, we get this actually, I think, rather beautiful catchphrase describing Sariputta's mind over and over again. Exalted, measureless, without enmity, without ill will. And of course, this would be the opposite of this complainer monk who feels wronged. And so, and you know, Sariputta is compared to, in a sense, inanimate objects, the earth, water, something that just is non-reactive in that way, something that clearly doesn't have conceit, like the planet Earth in an abstract sense. And so I think it's something very much to aspire to, but hard to maybe understand, because until we can begin to understand this conceit that we all carry around, we can't really see how attached we are to who we are and what we think. And it's a limiter. It's a limiter to the quality of our mind. And I think only when reading texts like this do we begin to even, at least conceptually or abstractly, begin to see how our minds, because due to our conceit, have been closed down, narrowed in, compared to how we are described Sariputta's mind to be. And so it's somewhat paradoxical in my mind, as a very kind of closed down mind person, that by letting go of this conceit and not holding on to this strong sense of who I am, I can actually expand my mind out. Because it's basically impossible to imagine without the conceit of I am. So how can we imagine what that would be like? And we only can get these sort of kind of nice, beautiful, encouraging phrases that sort of lead us on to practice more, to practice better. So I find it somewhat difficult and slightly paradoxical due to the limiting factors of my mind, because I feel like how could I possibly let those things go? But the very holding on to it is what limits me to be able to understand it.
And I think, there is this suggestion, we see it over and over again. Someone who had not established mindfulness of the body might well attack one of their spiritual companions. Someone not established might well attack one of their spiritual companions. Who is it here who is not established mindfulness of the body and is attacking one of their spiritual companions? Is it Sariputta?
I don't think so.
No.
I think Sariputta's mindfulness is 24/7, 365. He doesn't have to go to a retreat to establish mindfulness or get helpful pointers. His mindfulness is on. In the on position, there's no off position for him. There's no off position for an arahant. That's just the way it is.
Right. Right. And so we get the idea. It's being suggested subliminally that the individual who has not established mindfulness of the body and attacked their spiritual companions was the young monk.
Right. He lost himself. And that's why his mind ran amok, and he had this crazy sort of conclusion that this great monk was actively trying to be mean to him, which seemed so foolish by the end.
Right.
Which is often the case even for regular people. We get so angry about something, and in retrospect, when we cool down, we think, how could I even have thought that was such a big deal? Why did I make such a fuss? I don't even see the problem anymore. But
right.
it's as the sutta tells us, and as you said, it's very much centered around this mindfulness, this kind of awareness of what's happening, awareness of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, we talk about Sariputta and his exalted nature, but at the same time, he's comparing himself with the rag that's wiping up clean and unclean things, which shall remain nameless. Or he's comparing his expansive spirituality to such a lowly object. How is that possible, Stephen?
Well, the most stunning for me was when he actually compares himself to like a cracked pot oozing fat or something like that.
Right.
And so I think we generally would like to think that our bodies are our temples and they're wonderful and that it's a great honor and blessing to have it. that doesn't seem to be exactly what the Venerable is telling us here. Right? He's telling us that he's, what does it say at the very top of your screen? Horrified, repelled, and disgusted by this rotten body. Yeah. So he has become completely disenchanted with his own body. He sees it exactly what it is, which is this kind of squishy thing, not so great, destined to kind of fall apart. And he's let it go. One of the hardest things, perhaps, to let go, right? One's own conceit of this body is so great. So I'm horrified, repelled, and disgusted by this rotten body. I mean, I think that statement is like worth reading a few times because it seems so counterintuitive. Because we might say, see, he's being aversive. See, he doesn't like something. See, he's pushing back against the body. But I don't think that's what's being said here. I think he's, quote, seeing things as they really are. And so this physical body is something that is ultimately not so great. It is great in the sense that it enables us to come together and read suttas. That's pretty great. But ultimately, in sort of the grand scheme of things, it's not something we really want to hold on to too much. And we should be able to somehow let it go.
So how does this sutta help us in our everyday living? How does this help us not to be angry?
Yeah, good question. What do you think? Did it work for you? Do you feel like, that's it? When I get on that subway, I'm going to be like a rag. I'm going to be like the earth. You people can spit on me and ooze lattes on me, and I'm going to be completely 100% unreactive, and it's all good. How did that go?
Not so well. I mean, I've not had anyone ooze lattes, but I did have a guy spill his green energy protein drink on a jacket that my dad had bought me. I won't say how many decades ago, but a very nice jacket, which I still have not gotten dry clean. A note to self, dry clean that jacket. But it was very distressing. It was like this green energy shake on a jacket that my dear departed father had gotten. This beautiful coat from Barney's, but whatever. So yeah, no, I didn't lash out at him, but obviously I still have feelings about it. And I think it was rude of him, but I think that's taking us off topic. And I would love to, I'd love to hear what Wei Lin has to say.
Wait, yeah, I think you're still muted for some reason. I apologize.
There you go.
Okay, sorry. I was just thinking that when I read this, the take for me is one should not take things personally. We personalize every experience, personalize every comment, and think that that's about me. And this is like, yeah, don't, and you'll be fine. It's not about you.
Right. But does it work? I mean, we were told this, but how do we make it really happen in that sort of real time event when something is not so pleasant? Can we just call up Sariputta's advice on demand and say, be like Mr. Sariputta, don't get angry? Does that work for you?
Well, actually, I've been told off once. So that experience being told off worked for me. So every time it comes up, I'll say, yeah, remember what he said. It wasn't Sariputta, it was a colleague. And I told him, if you do not want to take this up to management, I will. It was over something on matter on HR. Then he said to me, be careful. Don't take this personally. It's not directed to you personally. It's a policy everyone has to live by. Then I stop and I pause. Yeah, it's actually not just directed at me. So I kept really quiet, and it really sank in. It sank in. So that embarrassment, it was said in front of another person, another younger colleague, that still lingers in my mind. So I use that experience, and I'm looking through this, and I says, oh well, if I had read the sutta, maybe it would be Sariputta that I would remember. But yeah, my older or senior colleague really did help me not to personalize something.
That's great. And I
Yeah.
just like to mention, follow up on your excellent point, is that we're told about mindfulness. And you know, of course, that the Pali word for mindfulness is sati.
Sati.
And one of the qualities of sati is remembering. In fact, that's the sort of more basic meaning of sati, is to keep in mind, to remember, to recall. And so we do have to, regular people like me and probably you, have to remember these things. It's not automatic, but we can bring up in our head this important point at the right opportunity. And so this quality of remembering is a very important quality of mindfulness, which maybe doesn't get so well translated in English, except if we say, keep it in mind. Keep this advice
Yeah.
in your mind.
Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate that too. You know, and I think this is why sutta study is so incredibly important, to keep these teachings in mind. And the more that we read them, and the more and especially reading them together and discussing them, we're absorbing these teachings, and it will help us in our day to day, and especially with everything. Catherine?
Oh, yes. Mindfulness, it notices the irritation coming out. But still, I think the practice of patience and tolerance, and most important is metta, the loving kindness. Because if a person is full of loving kindness, I think this person won't get irritated or angry so easily. So the main thing is still loving kindness. We have to remember this all the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Much appreciated. Very true. And in relation to loving kindness, I would add, this is a trick I've learned. Loving kindness plus assuming benevolent intention. So I play this game with myself. I used to get really tripped up and angry that people were trying to just do things to get at me. But when I started practicing this belief, whether it was true or not, that everyone around me had a benevolent intention, I got upset a lot less, because people did not mean me harm. They meant okay things for me. And then I would respond in that way, and then they would respond in kind. So that's a good trick as well. Diane?
I think this is, for me, this is one of those suttas that just made me laugh. I thought it was funny. I mean, just thinking about Mahamoggallana and Ananda taking a key and going around from building to building and saying, come forth, come forth. They knew what was going to happen. They knew this was going to be a great teaching moment. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger with all of the bile and pus and feces and all of that. I mean, it builds and builds and builds. And of course, that young monk has to come forth and say, I've made a mistake. And I found it funny. Buddha took advantage of a teachable moment, and he knew that Sariputta would drive it home. This was great.
Yay. Thank you so much, Diane. I love that. And yes, 100% agreed. The Buddha knew what he was doing. You know, the Buddha could have corrected the young monk, but he had something better in mind. Thank you so much, Diane. Sophia.
Thank you. I had a bad experience yesterday in the subway because it was a full man. I sit down close to him, not totally close because we are keeping the distance, social distance. But suddenly I didn't pay attention. I was in my own. And suddenly the man started screaming horrible things, but worse and worse, as a lion, but in a bad way. And I didn't believe it was to me, but in case I moved to another place and the man started screaming because I moved and saying worse things, and he was about to hit me, and unfortunately the train stopped and I get off from the train. But in this case, for me, I understand that it is a full person. And I didn't take personal apparently, but it was not angry. Instead, the I is in me that I was sad. I was feeling attacked and with not with angry, but oh my God, the fear and sad. Then it still is the I. How to avoid that? How to be really a person that didn't is disturbed for any bad thing.
Right. I really appreciate that experience that you shared, because I've experienced the same thing. That's one of the fun things about being a woman on a subway, I think, is you tend to take a lot of stuff from people. And I appreciate that instead of responding, that you saw where he was coming from and you had compassion. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. I
yeah.
think one great recollection we often say is that just as I wish to be happy, so too does everyone wish to be happy. And that person's just really struggling.
Right. Definitely. Jane Marie?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to make a comment about, these situations that we run into, which, we never know when they're going to come up, but some of these things just cause like a biochemical reaction, and it's really, really difficult, to kind of, bring some mindfulness to the situation when you've got all of these chemicals going through your body. And I mean, I think it can be done, not to react in the same way, but you're really like having to counter that physical reaction.
How do you think, Jane, that sort of gets worn down? I mean, how can we work on kind of reducing these chemical reactions?
Yeah, well, I think that's the question for somebody much, much more advanced than me. But I mean, I do think that you can still make the right choice in those situations. Not to react in a coarse way, not to like throw back the words like they're a weapon. I mean, that can be done. I think, so I do have one suggestion, which is, you can kind of separate yourself from those feelings, like the real brainstem reaction, and you can make a choice to, react in a way that's calm and in accordance to the Buddhist teachings.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will say that I think meditation also plays a big role by quieting down the activity in the central nervous system. We are much less apt to react to these types of biochemical experiences, as you say they are. We have two hands raised, Sue-Ann and Duncan. So it looks like 15 seconds each. Sue-Ann?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I just wanted to throw back to the other night's part of Anger, the sutta, and say thank you to you, Regina, for your explanation, and to also to Tara Brack when I was complaining about my cousin and me having this riff on Facebook of all places. and you were saying to investigate the anger because I couldn't let go of it. And I started really doing that, and I found underneath it, all of a sudden I started crying, and I realized that it's not anger. I'm really, really hurt and in pain that she did this to me. Basically, she pulled the cancel culture. For anyone who's not familiar with American slang, that just means if somebody does something politically incorrect, you just wipe them off like you never knew them. And that, I was carrying anger, but it really was pain and hurt that it was much easier to be angry than to accept that I've been hurt and brokenhearted. So I just wanted to say that was kind of a breakthrough for me. I know it sounds late in the game to be having that, but that's when it happened. And I want to thank you for your input on that, Regina, because that was a really big, big help in me coming to that.
Thank you so much, Soanne. I'm glad to hear that. It's, of course, always difficult to be confronted with dukkha, but we can do it. And Duncan.
Yeah.
The final word, Duncan.
Mindfulness of the body is a phrase that's used 7 times in the sutta, and I think is answering your question.
Thank you so much. It's just this fathom-long body, isn't it? That's what it's all about. We have to really, really, you know, we live from the neck up. We've got to bring our attention from the neck down. And with that being said, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Again, I know it's not an easy topic. I love hearing all of your comments and questions and stories and the exploration and growth that's taking place along with these suttas. That is just very, very inspiring to me. So thank you all. Thank you all so very much for sharing. And if we're going to meet again, of course, obviously, Sunday or Monday for those of you. And if anyone feels compelled to offer dana for our work, our website, our SoundCloud, whatever it is that we're continuing to work on, there's the link. And until we see you again, we hold you in our hearts. We thank you for sharing the Dhamma, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Blessings
Regina.
to everyone.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone. Good morning.
Be safe.
Bye.
Be safe.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.